All right, Caleb, let's take a look at your essay. Excuse me. So looking at your intro, let's start with your hook. Euthanasia is a controversial topic that has continued to be debated over the years. So the way you start your paper is okay, it's not the greatest. This kind of falls into the realm. If you go think back to, oh boy, what was it? Your introduction and conclusion packet I gave in class. This does fall in the realm of since the dawn of time, because this is something that it's a kind of intro that people do. For example, let's get rid of this part right here. Is a controversial topic. That. If we remove that, we say euthanasia has continued to be debated over the years. Yet that can arguably be said about almost any topic. So in regards to this, even though you're saying it's a controversial topic, it's kind of somewhat a lazy way to start a paper because it's just, oh, here's a controversial topic and I'm going to talk about it again. You want to get some other way to draw the reader into that. But as we follow, you defining it is okay because it's not in the hook. But then this is one of the concerns I have as well. There's a couple in here. So I believe that assisted suicide should be legalized in the United States as long as certain strict requirements are met. So first of all, we're slipping into the first person here. You need to avoid that entirely. And then legalization is part of it, but it doesn't necessarily, it does relate to the ethics behind it, of it being ethical. But what I would encourage you to do is to move away from the legalization component and just focus on the ethical part of it. And in addition, it's not exclusive to the United States, so your prompt is looking at mercy killing on a whole, not necessarily mercy killing in the United States, but I understand why you may do that because we live here, so we have more aptitude to change the law in the United States. But moving on, you've got another instance of first person, and then you go into kind of, well, here are the stipulations about what they must go through, especially in this part. So you don't need that because you're not asking, well, what's the best way to set up mercy killing? It's just straightforward. Is it ethical or not? Other than that, your thesis is pretty good. Terminally ill people have a right to end their life if they are suffering, to die with dignity, and to avoid the unnecessary financial burdens left behind while trying to keep them comfortable as the end nears. So, thesis is pretty good. Hook could be better, and the stuff in the middle that connects your hook to your thesis, the things I talked about are things to think about as you move on, but we will talk about that. But that's just a work in progress. All right, so as we move on to the next paragraph, the pain and suffering that a terminally ill patient has to endure seems pointless and almost cruel. This is actually a pretty good topic sentence that tells me that the paragraph is going to be about the pain they have to face, that's not fair to them. But the problem is, for the parameters of an argumentative essay, you're not following through with the topic sentence. So, because you have a lot of hypotheticals and just vague examples, so you're talking about the disease progressing, it will most likely get worse, and the most likely that's on the borderline of that kind of hypothetical, and that's the thing I'm noticing a lot with this argumentative writing that I've been going through, is you need to get rid of the hypothetical. Oh, well, this will happen, or this will most likely happen. You literally can just fix that by saying, this is a possibility that can come out of this, and this is how we need to address it. But that's something to think about. And then you talk about the people around them. So that is true. Some could be affected by it in some way. But the thing is, as we go through this paragraph, the big thing with this essay, an argumentative essay, is the use of evidence. And this is a part of rhetoric that we talk about. And that rhetoric in particular is ethos, logos, and pathos. And this is, we won't talk about this just yet because it's not as relevant to the argumentative essay, but you are on a completely pathos rhetoric here, which is a good strategy to have, but especially when you have, if we look at ethos, this is kind of ethos and logos. That's more what you're addressing with a argumentative essay because you need evidence. And, you know, the prompt did say you needed to use evidence, and that checklist I had said you needed to do that, but you have none of it in here. It's just basically this paragraph says people should have, well, actually, you don't even tie it back into the thesis now that I think about it. You just say the pain is not good, but you don't tie it back to this right here, that they deserve the right to end their life. So there's a few problems with your paragraph as I think about this now. You're not tying it back to the thesis, and you have absolutely no evidence or analysis in this paragraph, and that is a concern. The grammar, I don't see any concerns. I'm noticing you have this double space here. Typically, we haven't talked about MLA format, but that just surprises me because usually I see it single spaced because that's the formatting now, and especially now that we don't have typewriters, I don't see that too often. So now I'm a little curious where the double space came from, but that's something we'll work on when we get to MLA. I'm not going to continue there, but overall, this body paragraph, the grammar is okay. It just doesn't stay on topic relating to your thesis and has no evidence. Okay, and as we move on to the next body paragraph, your topic sentence is pretty good. Debilitating is a good word to have in here, so that's good. I like the phrase die with dignity. It's got some plosive alliteration there, which makes it impactful if this was poetry in particular, but it's not. But anyways, you know, your topic sentence and ending of the paragraph is good, but it's the same problem with this as the other one, is that you have no evidence in here. It's very hypothetical, like, imagine a life like this. I don't want to imagine. You need to tell me what people's lives are like, and it's in the articles that you have, so be aware of that. But the other thing I want to point out, and this is a problem I'm noticing, I'm going to pull up my own document. So I pulled up your paragraph and put it into, I don't know why that did not highlight, put it into some bullet points. So if we look at your statements that are not questions, people suffering with a terminal illness or other seriously debilitating condition should be allowed to die with dignity. It is the right of every person to be able to have a say in the decisions that directly impact their life. Imagine being a smart, influential person and then all of a sudden developing a terminal illness such as Alzheimer's. Being kept alive by machines is hardly a life someone would choose. So this is a good sentence. This is your closest to tying it back into this one, and maybe two, your second and eighth sentence are your best ways of tying it back into the ethical component of mercy killing. Because you do say right here, it's the right of every person to be able to have a say in the decision, so you're kind of hinging on it's ethical, but this is also vague because you don't outright say mercy killing. They should just have the decision to do what they want, which isn't what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to figure out, is it ethical? But this is a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 questions in an 8-sentence paragraph. And you answer one of them, kind of. And this is the problem with an argumentative essay. Do not ask questions, especially with things like this that not only slip into second person, but for an argumentative essay, your job as a writer is to answer these questions. And you do have things like Alzheimer's in the Time article, in the Kevorkian article, but you're not mentioning any of the articles. You need to make sure you are mentioning them and referencing them and get rid of these questions because it's not what an argumentative essay is designed to do. All right, and then as we move on to your last body paragraph, uh, I'm not going to repeat myself because it's the same thing. Up until this point, it is very, very concerning that I have not read the conclusion yet, and I still have no evidence or analysis from any articles. And that is the whole point of doing these essays, is you need to be incorporating those into your essay. So that's a concern. And looking at a sentence like this, if it's inevitable that a person is going to die, blah, 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 they should have the right to decide whether or not they want to fight, blah, 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 potentially incurring. This is a good analysis part. So you started with more analysis here that I haven't seen in the previous paragraphs. But we're still hinging on hypothetical. We have no analysis. And the other concern is you were supposed to have a paragraph, and typically it's structured in the third one, where you bring up the opposition. So you were supposed to bring up, and I haven't been too picky where people put it as long as it makes sense and flows in the paragraphs or in the paper. But for yours in particular, well, for them in general, you need to be addressed. No, yeah, for yours, sorry. You need to address people who think it's not ethical, look at their standpoint, and then go into why they are wrong with evidence and analysis. And that is completely missing from your essay. All right, so when we move on to your conclusion, I'm going to pull this up on Microsoft Word again because I have some concerns with these. Oops, let me pause this a second. My highlights didn't work. All right, so I paused it, highlighted it, and came back to it. So your conclusion, even though you've got long sentences, is actually pretty short, but for the sake of it, it's okay. So you restate your thesis, but as we go through this, here's the problem. Strict guidelines that doctors and patients follow when coming to that decision. This is wholly irrelevant because this is not referenced in your essay at all. And also, this isn't a problem solution paper. You're just saying if it's ethical. But the problem with this one is you never mention what those guidelines should be other than they shouldn't suffer. So your paper has basically been like, they shouldn't suffer, and it's too expensive for them, it's not fair. And then you throw in your thesis again, strict guidelines that doctors and patients follow. But you don't really talk about those guidelines. This second sentence is okay. We slip into that first person again. You're just straight out saying it is ethical, it is not ethical, whatever it is. The last one, I had told you all to italicize book titles, but I'm kind of letting it slide if you had underlined it, but this doesn't have either. And then there's a few things that are throwing me off with your paper in terms of stylistic change. And then somehow at the end, I don't know how this happened, but we went from all these double spaces, and then you use the single space, which just throws me off because the way this writing style, the way this sentence is so different from the rest of the paper. The style and grammar totally changes with this last sentence. So I don't know if you just got kind of lazy at the end and threw this in here, but to be honest, it doesn't flow well with the rest of your paper. So your conclusions are not supposed to bring in any new information. And then this is the first instance I have of a mercy killing, is the very last sentence of your paper. You do not use this anywhere else. You have a capitalization issue. You have two capitalization issues, an italicized issue, a contraction, and then just this random example thrown in here. So overall, at the paper, I didn't notice any grammar or spelling things until I see 4 in the very last sentence. So I'm a little concerned what happened here. But overall, your paper hinges on just kind of hypothetical. You don't have any analysis or examples. You have this thrown in here, but this doesn't necessarily have to do with what the rest of your paper has talked about. So just consider the things I've talked about as you move on for your next essay.